My name is Sam Gituko, and just in time for news review, I'm joined by Mheshimiwa Kipruto Kirwa, former cabinet minister, Jared Okello, member of parliament for Nyando, as well as David Osiani, a public affairs analyst, and also supposed deputy governor of Nairobi.
We wish him well.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it true that you're being considered for deputy governor by Governor Sonko?
I don't know. You should have asked the person considering whether it is true he is considering me.
What would be your view?
Public service is an honor in any situation.
Thank you.
Because I know I'm cut out for public service in the long run. Right. So if it were in the short run, if it happened tomorrow, I'd be glad.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'll leave it at that so that I do not spoil for you.
Thank you very much.
To know that his boss-to-be isn't very easy to deal with.
Such is the nature of mankind. So I don't know who my boss-to-be may be. I could be a cabinet secretary tomorrow, in which case my boss-to-be would be a very different person.
Yeah. Whoa. Anything you say might be used against you, so I advise you not to go ahead with that conversation. Let's get into the dailies today. And on the front page of the Standard, mystery of strange orders in graft war. Yesterday we saw that a conference of anti-corruption stakeholders, quite very heavy sound bites by several personalities that spoke there, including George Kinoti, Nuruddin Haji, the DPP, and Ali Twalib. If I got that name correct, the new ACC CEO will shortly be looking at those up sounds or those voices. But then again, on the front page of the Daily Nation, Uhuru reads a riot act to Ruto's men. We understand that the politicians had, a section of politicians had hoped to discuss party's health, but President was quick to turn the conversation in his favor, telling them to shape up and pull in the same direction with the rest of Jubilee. So we'll be having that conversation on whether there is people pulling in different directions, or is it just a concern that is baseless in as far as the appointment of Cabinet Secretary in charge of Interior to be the chairperson of the Cabinet Committee on implementation of development projects, and the view that a few people feel that the DP is being sidelined. So we're looking at that. And of course, still on the front page of the Daily Nation, you'll see that graft judiciary on the spot once again. Multi-agency team accuses courts of being deterrents rather than enablers in corruption war. If we have those substance, maybe we can begin the conversation from that point.
Which really pull us down is some of the strange orders that we receive. Other than even starting the investigation, we are stopped even before we record a statement from somebody who you know very well are stolen from Kenyans. You know very well, and all Kenyans know, we are pursuing this person, and it's not something we're imagining. We all know.
Those people that we have charged to step aside. They must step aside. And that is in the Constitution, and it's a right that we have to ask. We are not pleading. We charge you, you must step aside. And we will go all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to get that ruling. Hakuna kubembelezana.
When you steal from us, the hospital money, roads money, development fund for all this country, what do you think you are? You are not better than that terrorist you are battling there in the Dusit and other areas.
Ona wengine wamekuwa charged, halafu unasikia kompyuta imeibwa. Na mara ingine hata hatuna haya. Muko mumefanya na bado muko mbele. Hiyo haiwezekani. Kama umeiba, mali ya mwananchi itarudi.
You hear mama alikufa. She could not deliver because there was no ambulance to take her to the nearest clinic. And here you are bragging in Nairobi with big cars. And we say, this guy is a good man. They come do fundraising for us, whether it's a place of worship, schools, matanga, and we say, this is a good man. Then you say, ESCC does not work.
Well, quite some heavy voices there you hear. What is informing this? Are they frustrated? And whomever they're speaking to, are they listening? Are we going to see any change?
Well, when I listened to them last night, I got worried because they seem not to realize that they are the ones who are supposed to push the cart. They seem to be thinking that somebody else should be able to do. The only thing that really I may give them credit is that the court orders that some of the guys have been getting to go back to the office. I think we should adhere to the Constitution and also the good manners that we've created in the past. That once you have a problem in front of you, we are not saying you are guilty, you step aside to allow other people to run the show and also for investigations to take shape. But the way I see it, I think they were talking to themselves, because the public is equally frustrated, and we expected more answers coming from them, that we have done this to overcome this, we've done this to overcome this. But when they look, they are also at a loss. I don't know who is giving them orders. And if somebody is calling them that stop prosecuting so and so, they should be able to realize that the head of state, who is the chief executive of Kenya, has already said all systems go, and therefore they must do that as a matter of urgency.
What do you make of this?
Well, I think foremost, credit goes to the man who even attempts, who gets to the ring. You know, for far too long we have spoken big on fighting graft, but it was all fury signifying nothing. So for the first time, we have seen people dedicated to even attempt. You know, the president said, let's try. It may not be won conclusively now or today, but it is a seed that is sown that we will reap from in the future. I think the frustration of this gentleman, if I heard them rightly, because I attended the conference yesterday, is with the court orders that are given. So someone steals 2 billion, he's a governor. Then investigations start. Then he rushes to court and says, you're not going to investigate these accounts of mine. And the court gives orders barring the investigative agencies from investigating those accounts. And yet those accounts would be the basis for a case, you know, to hold this person into account and throw them into jail. And so their frustration may be real, but this will call for a concerted effort between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. There needs to be a sit down, and you know, where the president would express to the Chief Justice his genuine desire to conquer the menace of corruption. And the Chief Justice recognizing that whereas most of his judicial officers may be wonderful men and women of honor, there are those judicial officers who have just decided to be rogue. And so he needs to rein in on them and see what has to be done. It may not be within his powers. It may be within the powers of the Judicial Service Commission. But eventually we have to understand, putting into context how much corruption affects this country, we then must pull together towards, you know, a destiny that's good for us and our children. Let me try and put it into context in a short while. If you steal 2 billion shillings, like I've seen some governors accused, and I know very well that to build a basic dispensary that would have a maternity wing costs about 2 million shillings. Then you have literally stolen 1,000 dispensaries in a country. This is what we're talking about. And you were saying, without 1,000, if one dispensary serves a population of about 5,000 people, and one dispensary can take care of children being born daily, let's say 10 children, and with our mortality rate being about 2/10, you have literally taken more than 20,000 lives annually. This is the extent to which corruption affects this country. It must be broken down to the simple man's language so that we understand why we have to defeat it. It may not be defeated now, but there is need for the whole country to begin to work with it, on it, decisively.
Right. Mheshimiwa Okello, no.
You got it.
From Nyando. So we see the DCI and the DPP, they're agitated with the kind of court orders that are given by the judiciary. We see the Attorney General even saying that we need to reconsider bail terms. They need to be commensurate with the crimes and secure the difference effect we have to achieve. Then we see this gentleman, the new CEO at EACC, talking of people that continue to do Harambes fundraisers at different fora. I mean, who are they speaking to? Because they can do all this before court. What is the frustration about?
Well, thank you, Sam, for giving me another opportunity to come. It's always a pleasure attending this show. First things first, Kenyans at a mundane level would want to see tangible results on the war against graft. So the investigative agencies, the prosecutorial agencies must up their game so that Kenyans can see that indeed something is happening. We every day read our newspapers on monies that have been swindled or mismanaged or, perforated into the system, or monies that have, been pocketed by individuals at the expense of essential services, such as the one that my brother Osiani is talking about. Those that can, build dispensaries, health facilities, roads, provision of water services, and all that. So Kenyans really want to see results.
Right.
At the end of the day, all these agencies, you can see, even from the conference going on, that they are, putting blame squarely on one prosecutorial agency, which is the judiciary. I know that the Chief Justice is addressing the conference today, and he has received enough swipes. He will be able to defend himself. But, Kenyans do not want this push and shove. We want to see that those who are implicated are firstly stepping out of their responsibilities. And the reason as to why Kenyans domiciled this issue of stepping aside, in fact, my brother here, Kerwa, who is a cabinet minister, some of his colleagues then, some of his colleagues,
never know.
Well, once a minister, always is.
Yeah, thank you.
Waziri.
Yes, asante.
Some of his colleagues who were implicated in various corruption scandals had to step aside. And the reason is very simple, that we fear that in the course of discharging your duties, you would be sitting on very critical documents. You will be subverting the judicial process. You will be interfering with witnesses. I mean, this is somebody who still wields powers within his jurisdiction. So that is why the issue of stepping aside was crafted and domiciled in Kenya. But you see, these people who have consistently been mentioned, the court has a way of giving them a leeway to get back into their offices and hence interfere with the process of investigation. But, we do know that these investigative authorities have properly been funded. In fact, this year's budget, a huge chunk of it was apportioned to DCI, EACC, and the DPP. The judiciary actually suffered, you remember. Whether it is as a result of a pronouncement of we shall revisit, I don't know. But they suffered the biggest.
Those are more resources were allocated during the supplementary budget.
Yeah, 1.5 billion was again expended to them. But the bottom line is there isn't a cohesion between the executive, the prosecutorial agencies, together and the judiciary. We must be pulling towards the same direction for us to win this war. Because you are dealing with people who have stolen billions of shillings. I mean, there is a common adage in the United States that why hire a lawyer if you can buy the judge? And that applies everywhere. So these investigative authorities, the judiciary must pull towards one direction. And Kenyans do not want this brouhaha, this bravado on television stations with caveats and coming up with, big terms, bandaged around. We don't want to see that. In fact, the best way to win war on corruption is covert mission. They shouldn't even come on television to tell us anything. Let us just see the action being done.
And so what I'm wondering about is we have 2,500 delegates attending the conference, including you yesterday. I don't know if you're attending today.
Well, I got an invitation as well.
And most likely we'll have another conference. Is it annual? So we'll have another one next year?
Yeah.
So what do we do to ensure that we are not still talking about the blame game that we see the DPP blaming the judiciary? When the DPP came, he was blaming the EACC, saying that there are certain strings that they were not tying properly. So what do we do? Because at the end of the day, as he says, Mwananchi wants to see prosecution and assets recovered and service delivered.
You know, Sam, we must first agree that corruption is a deeply rooted problem in the society. And that even as blame would be apportioned, rightly so to an extent, on some rogue judicial officers who give orders barring justice, we as a society must fix ourselves within. My pastor said, Pastor Paul Owuor, that we sometimes complain, but we do not realize how corrupt we are at our level. And he gave an example of us going into a public toilet and finding tissue paper. And just how we roll it, and we do not do the same at home. That level of wastage, that is corruption at your level. You just have not gotten a chance to be able to sit on billions so that you roll it and roll it. Now, if we are able to fix society at our level, back at home, and look ourselves in the mirror each morning, and every parent looks at the child and imparts on the child the nobility of living a straight life, then we will have won to a certain extent. Be that as it may, I think the reason the judiciary takes this flack is they are the ones to demonstrate how painful it is to indulge in corruption. So these agencies will do their investigations, and I hope and pray and admonish them to do thorough investigations that do not leave gaps when people go to the judiciary. But once you are in the judiciary, they must demonstrate to Kenyans, and do so expeditiously, that the price of corruption is heavy. Look at the case of, for example, this former CBK governor, Njoroge Ndung'u. It has not even begun. It was to commence in 2014. 5 years down the line, it hasn't begun. Now, justice delayed is justice denied. It may be denied to Kenyans or even to Njoroge Ndung'u himself. So why don't we expeditiously deal with these cases, firmly deal with them, and at the end of it all, Kenyans must be able to look at the judgments that are expensed in the judiciary and say, here, there has been justice to the Kenyan, or justice to the person accused. Because again, sometimes there are people who are accused falsely. I do not want to take everyone who's taken before court as having been guilty. But there doesn't seem to have been that will to do that. But as that happens, we have things like code of regulations, and Waziri will tell you that there are code of regulations in this country that whenever you have been charged before court, you need to step aside. So how come then that my brother Swazuri is back in office and investigations are not yet complete? How did he even end up there? Those are the injustices that we see, and it's a matter of conscience. He should have himself said, I, as a patriotic Kenyan who seeks the best for this country, cannot allow myself to go back and sit in office when I'm still under investigation.
Mheshimiwa Kirwa, every time there's this conversation, you'll hear the question about the resources that have been allocated to the judiciary. But still you wonder, is it about the actual budget that has been allocated to the judiciary, or is it the workings of the judiciary? And what do you think from all this conversation, what do you think can be done or needs to be done? Because I can assure you that the CJ, unless he has changed his view, he will say that judges and magistrates are going to make a decision based on the strength of the evidence.
Well, that is true, and I think that is what our laws provide. But there is the law, and there is also the culture. We've not developed sufficient culture to feel at personal level. I would imagine if I'm accused of certain aspects of corruption and I'm still running a ministry, I would even find myself very uncomfortable to be seen by officers without expediting the issue of the case. That's why I agree with Osiani that it is always good manners, for one, if you are accused, to step aside, and also the case to be expedited, such that if I'm not guilty, I go back to the office as soon as possible. There is also the issue is, if you are sticking in the office, it means there is something you want to hide. You are guilty of some even in your own mind, you know you are guilty, and therefore you want to cover for certain tracks that you cannot cover when you're outside the office. Now, when it comes to the issue of resources, I think resources, yes, resources may delay a process. If you are planning to go to Mombasa today and you do not have sufficient fuel, and you have no faith that I'll be able to send you fuel when you are in Voi, then you will wait until you get all the fuel to travel to Mombasa. Now, the judiciary has some fuel to move on and convict one or two individuals without necessarily waiting for resources. It is not the resources they lack, at times it's the commitment. Now, number three, I think as long as we are not cohesive as a nation, corruption is going to be embedded in our tribes, such that if somebody is arrested, we go back and we say, this one has been arrested because he comes from our tribe, and we say it's our thief, and therefore our thief should be let go. And you've seen some evidences abound that some of the individuals who are accused of corruption, before the cases were over, they're already running for various positions, and they won handsomely, which means at the level of the community, they don't see corruption as a problem. As long as you're able to bring to us part of what you have taken from the national coffers. Now, the other thing is we need to do a lot of public education for people to link loss of national resources to loss of livelihoods on the ground. The moment we connect, the way Osiani was saying, that this is the product of what happened at the national level, that is when people will start owning up the crusade against corruption. Otherwise, we are going to be doing shadow boxing, and no results are going to be produced. I really pity the president, because I would have expected by now we would have one or two convictions. Finally, on the investigative arms, why don't you do effective investigation? Such that by the time you take somebody to court, you know you have credible evidence, and that evidence can yield into conviction and recovery of assets. That is what Kenyans want to see.
Mheshimiwa Okello, as we wind up on this topic, this guy, the new ESCC CEO, Twalib, he is talking of, again, that point of people that go to do those contributions in Harambes. But unfortunately, in this country, we have that culture so much. I'm sure even yourself, you've been invited to Harambes. Is it a law that we need? Because I know when it's an election season, you're not allowed to go and fundraise. Is it a law that we need to stop those bad manners, in quotes? Because several times you'll hear politicians, including members of parliament, say that they need a higher salary because every other time their constituents are calling for help, which is financial.
Yeah, well, in the spirit of Harambe, pulling together, we have seen a lot of things coming up. Schools have been built courtesy of Harambes. People have gone to school because of Harambes. So we cannot, say Harambes are bad. We need also to separate distinctively the issues between fundraisers and corruption. So if there are people who have been implicated in corrupt scandals, we need to go after them and let Harambes, either in churches, in schools, or wherever, be what they are, because we have seen what they have done. Now, taking a cue from the immediate former EACC chair, Halake Wako, CEO, sorry, 6 years in office, full tenure, 54 cases before court, not a single conviction. That is a harsh indictment on his conduct. And even as we look at the laws and missing links in this fight, we may also want to revisit the restrictions on dismissal of people serving in commissions. Let me tell you, as a matter of fact, it is almost an impossibility to take somebody out of a commission. Almost an impossibility, unless they willingly resign. You have seen, during the times when we feel that we have been mistreated by IEBC, and they do it so often. We just have to do a protest. We have to do sit-ins until they resign. So that tells you how difficult it is to get these people out of office. But, somebody sitting in office for that long, only 54 cases, going to court and not a single conviction. is a testament that we really need to revisit these issues. But you also have to remember that most of the cases EACC presented before DPP for prosecution were sent back. Those files were sent back to them because they could not stand a case. They could not with certainty say that we are sure of a conviction on this matter. So they were untenable. So these are issues where even as we fight this war on graft, we must look at. My brother, Honorable Kerwa, has alluded to people being cleared, even to run for political offices. I mean, if you read Chapter 6 of our Constitution on Leadership and Integrity, and even the Political Parties Act, it is so clear that somebody with a questionable conduct cannot be cleared to run for political office. But what did Halake Wako do? All of us were cleared, and I'm saying all of us because I'm part of the Politburo.
Sure.
So these are matters that we have
because it is said that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Well, that is neither here nor there. If what we are seeing here would happen in developed nations such as the UK or the US, I mean, you'd be in jail. And the speed at which they carry out the investigation is also faster. Look at what we had with the Chicken Gate scandal here. Two guys, a son and his dad, back in the UK. Same case, same evidence, same matters. In fact, under the spirit of complementarity, they were ready to share the kind of evidence that they have over our Chicken Gate suspects here.
Yes.
Our suspects are loitering on the streets, very scot-free. Yet, the father and the son are languishing in jail in the UK. So we also need to borrow a leaf. But I know it is out of convenience that all these delays are done so that they can subvert the judicial process. But most importantly, we may also have to consider, you have a newly appointed magistrate by the Judicial Service Commission. Newly, that means little experience. I'm not saying zero experience, but little experience. But each time we have seen cases touching on corruption before court, you can see the quality of lawyers representing the suspect. And they are being confronted by a magistrate who got a job just last week and is still very new in office. One is intimidation, you know, and the mere fact that perhaps this magistrate is not as, you know, averse with issues touching on the judicial process. That is why they go home scot-free. So we may have to consider perhaps having corruption cases being handled at the High Court level and above, not the magistrates level. So I think these are issues that can form part of our conversation.
I think it would be important to note, just to add, that Harambes are not bad. Culturally, as a society, we are communal in nature. However, the Kenyan citizen may not have the sophistry, the advantage, you know, of sophistry to understand or aggregate how much you earn, how much you can invest. I never peg one's income on their salaries as David, because I know that some can earn 600,000, invest 300,000 over 1 year, and that 3 million will be able to bring him a steady income of an extra 700,000 or $1 million every year. It's possible. However, I am yet to know what business we can do that would afford liquidity to be able to dish out tens of millions every weekend.
Every other weekend.
Right? Now, those are the ones that ought to be questioned. And it must go even to the churches. The church leaders have taken a backseat in the war on graft because they have been muzzled. They've been given the food, so they cannot speak. They know very well it's bad manners to speak with food in your mouth. So they obey that rule of not speaking with food in their mouth. And they ought to know, as a Christian, I need to remind them that Ananias did not die in a brothel or in a terrorist attack. He died in the church.
Right.
He went and could not be accountable. And Peter asked him a simple question. Is this all that you made to bring to Christ? And he said, oh, yes, yes. And he had made the loot and kept some at home. And so some of these leaders we see who take God for a ride will die in the church. I tell you unequivocally. And so we need to hold leaders to account. But then, over to you.
Before they die, Okello.
If go death, they will.
Okello, you quoted some figures. I was trying to verify them. I'm not able to, but I look at the paper today. It says that the Attorney General was citing 549 corruption-related cases have been prosecuted from 2013 to 2018 by the DCI and EACC. You have a figure of about 50 54. Those are facts that we'll be sure to check and see the true position about it. Mukonzi says that when taken to court, the DPP or DCI is not saying you are guilty, but simply that there is suspicion that you or your office may be implicated. The honorable thing is to step aside. Yeah. Rotich is saying that the best way also for graft acquired is cut essential services, water, electricity, sewage to their property until they are cleared. And the Ngosi on Twitter is saying that the Attorney General DPP should invest in foolproof investigation before prosecuting, and the Chief Justice concurs with me. That's according to the Ngosi, tweeting us at Citizen TV. And of course, you can join the conversation by texting us on 22422 or tweeting us at Citizen TV Kenya at Samgituku. The hashtag to use is Daybreak.